So as is our custom in the summertime throughout July and August, it is always a delight and an honor to be able to bring up to our bima interesting members of the congregation to share their perspectives, to share their insights, to share their experience either of Beth Am or of their professional lives. And so it's my honor to continue in that spirit. This week's speaker is Jeremy Burns, who is, of course, a member of Beth Am, also a local attorney who has been a member of our community since moving to California 22 years ago. So it's been a minute. He served, most recently, he served on the Hazon Task Force, who was tasked with reviewing the processes involved in selecting, integrating, supporting, and evaluating our former senior rabbi, and whose report was issued last summer. So Jeremy, it is my pleasure to welcome you to our bima.
Thank you. I think I was their age when we moved out here, maybe just a little bit older, having met also my wife during college. So that brought back some incredibly fond memories. And I think a happy couple tonight, a bar mitzvah, a new rabbi, soft opening, but still, we'll take that, and a new member of our community. That's a big night where I'm sitting. Good evening, and thank you for asking me to speak. When Rabbi Heath asked me to speak, he thought it might be interesting to hear from someone on the Hazon Task Force a year after our report was released. That prompt forced me to think how drastically the world had changed between the pre-pandemic time when we had hired our former rabbi and the time that our former rabbi actually arrived, just as the pandemic had set in and everything suddenly went online. So when Rabbi Heath asked me to reflect a little bit about what it felt like being on that task force a year later, my immediate reaction was to consider how our community has yet again gone through another tectonic shift since the publication of that report. I'm talking, of course, about October 7th and its aftermath here in the United States. Our Hazon report noted how much Beth Am's diversity of opinion about the state of Israel was what we called a dimension of factionalization. I think in colloquial terms, that meant there's some disagreement about that subject. But that was before October 7th, and I wonder to what extent that's still true. To be honest, I don't really know. I know people disagree about what's best in terms of policy in Israel, but I certainly hope that the degree of factionalization we have here now on that issue is actually less, since it seems clearer than ever, to me at least, what the case for Israel is, even if there's great diversity of opinion over the details of what the Israeli state is and should be. During a period of great turmoil, I've personally found comfort and strength from our Jewish community here. I think that for many of us, what happened that day on October 7th reminds us of what connects us. And now, more so than even when the report was written, we need to find ways to support each other and to contribute to the positive development of our community here. I'm not here to give a policy speech about Israel, the war. I'll leave that to far more learned people than I, but if you give me a minute, I can tell you a bit about my story, and maybe you'll find some resonance in how I've had to reconsider how it feels to be Jewish in America at this particular moment, and how important Beth Am is to us now. So I'm a third-generation American Jew. All four of my grandparents were born in English-speaking countries. Two, my father's side, born in London. Two, my mother's side, born in Toledo, Ohio in the 1920s. If any one image captured my maternal family's American story, it was one I found on the internet of my grandfather's World War II landing ship returning from occupied Japan in the San Francisco Bay. The ship is clearly identifiable by its number the Golden Gate Bridge looms above. I didn't even know he'd ever been here. It's reasonable to believe, though, that my young 20-something-year-old grandfather was aboard that rickety vessel because the ship passed exactly once into San Francisco Bay, having departed from the East Coast to Japan. And the picture was taken to commemorate its return to the United States. So I can see, at least in my own mind's eye, he's ready to return to his wife in Ohio, my grandmother, whom some of you may have met, and his newborn daughter, my mother. He was here well before I was, it turns out. The arc of my mother's family's American story was, in the century plus, since my grandparents were born in Ohio, a story of assimilation. Whereas at some point Yiddish was spoken, where at some point kashrut was observed, our Judaism had become integrated into our Americanness. But my family's assimilation story has a twist. I met and married into an American, Jewish, and Israeli family. In 2002, we moved here as my wife Liat, who's here tonight with her sister, my sister-in-law, to work at the Gideon Hausner Jewish Day School, which has strong connections to Israel. Our children attended that school and made many connections to Israeli families who had moved here, some of whom have since gone back, and to whom our children remain very close. So that's the backstory. Now I'll set a scene here for what unfolded this year. It is the evening of October 6, 2023. Our family is sitting at a hip French restaurant in Los Angeles. We are about to celebrate our first Parents' Weekend at USC, where my son had matriculated just a few weeks earlier. And as we sit, a seismic jolt, not from the nearby San Andreas Fault, but from urgent text messages from Israel. Liat's mother is in a safe room in her sister's apartment outside Tel Aviv. There, it is the morning of October 7th, and terrible things are afoot. The Iron Dome roars overhead. And the next few days are a blur. We stumble through the rest of that Parents' Weekend as life around us, football games, the usual college merriment, continues as normal under the Southern California sun. And I am aware of a new feeling. A dysphoria has grown between my Americanness and my Jewishness, replacing the long-nurtured sense of integration. As the next year unfolded, this new feeling of dysphoria stopped being novel. In fact, it's almost a daily occurrence as we watch various events unfold on social media and get reports back from our friends' children at the various institutions their children are attending. At one point, a video goes viral of a teaching assistant at USC, my son's school, ripping down a hostage poster. Of course, it actually turns out to be my son's physics class. And not just that, it's his TA, the one grading his work. Then his school selects a valedictorian who, it turns out, believes that Israel should be abolished. And I hear her words through the ears of my great-grandparents and my great-great-grandparents who left all the places that all of our grandparents left for reasons we can all too easily imagine. And I imagine what those words mean for my wife's family, or for those of our friends from Hausner whose children have gone back, whose families have gone back. And of course, I wonder what they mean for me. But I don't have to tell you about the story of this last year because, like me, you've lived it. It's your children telling me these stories that you tell to me, or your posts, or the conversations that we have when we try to figure out what's best now for our children, like where on earth our children should go to college. And I have another one about to apply now that this has all happened. So it's been a tough year, but Beth Am and our Jewish community have been a pillar of support for us. Just having a community like you to process all this has been so incredibly important. And the moments like after services, when everything is said or nothing at all, and we just share what we're collectively experiencing, means everything. I'm struck always by how peaceful it is here at Beth Am in the early evening on a Friday night. Often, in the outdoor services of summer, if you listen closely, you can hear hawks chatting with each other in the trees above us. The sun is setting out these windows, and the light is golden. And if you peek down the hill a little, you catch a vision of the San Francisco Bay, and in the other direction, the mighty redwoods growing out of the soil of the Santa Cruz Mountains. But despite this incredible serenity, it's really a place of great natural turmoil, isn't it? After all, this is a place where continents are, at this very moment, sliding silently past each other, creating incredible friction and pressure. Like our beautiful hills, we at Beth Am, in the days before the pandemic, and as members and as Jews living in America now, in this post-October 7th era, have experienced how underneath what seems stable there can be pressure building. And sometimes that pressure releases and it can shake us a little or a lot. So here is my own personal addendum as we move forward, a tumultuous year later. Here and now is the time to recognize the importance of each other, our community, and what binds us together. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.